some sort of historical foundation or society?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know if you know we'd be obligated to return or complete the delivery. I imagine that the recipients have moved on, now. But I mean, the other precedent that we know of recently was there was a salvage of a British cargo ship off of England, called, I believe, the Garasopa, that had been carrying a cargo of, among other things, a cargo of silver during World War II, and when it was torpedoed and sunk. And when they brought up the salvage, they also brought up a bag that turned out to contain Royal Mail. And that, I understand, has ended up with the Royal Mail Museum, and several items have been conserved and have been placed on display in a museum display about this find. So, certainly that would be something if we're so fortunate as to find the wreck and locate items like that, we would consider it. If it's if the conditions are just right. I mean, we do have contingencies built into our research design that address the possibility of scientific sampling from the site, to collect materials and diagnostic items, so long as they're of a manageable size and appropriate, and we would not have to forcibly remove them from the wreck. We wouldn't want to pull or tear anything away or cut anything away. But it would be of great scientific benefit to understand, number one, the possibility, the long-term preservation prospects for the site, and also to understand better the deep water aircraft site formation. That there's been only a few of these aviation archaeological sites located in deep water, and none that I believe have had any samples retrieved. So we would learn a great deal about that process. And then, of course, we do have provisions as well in place. Megan, Dr. Licklider-Munden, is trained in materials conservation, and she's a specialist in submerged aircraft structures. So we have the best, talent on board here to deal with that if it were to happen, and if we were to make that decision. And then standing by at the Conservation Research Laboratory in Texas A&M is another of our colleagues, and one of the co-founders of Air Sea Heritage Foundation is Dr. Peter Fix, and he would take over. Megan could stabilize any items we were to bring up, and for transportation, and then it would be conserved at College Station, and once that process is done, we would ensure that it's the data is available to the scientific community, and that the items themselves would be arranged. We would arrange for museum display and access to researchers in the future, and where it would be appropriately cared for and housed, and also would serve as a tribute to Simone Clipper and its crew.
And I think we ended our last watch with 58 targets. Is that still the current number?
We are still at 58 targets.
Still at 58. And then you mentioned that 30 and 31, we may end up going back over with the Argus cam just to get a better visual on them. When you have a moment, could we cue those up?
Sure. That is number 30.
And is 30 and 31, are those the two that were located sort of nearer to each other?
Yeah, I believe so, on
Okay.
Mike's watch. He doesn't have me convinced on these, but we'll go
Right.
take a look.
What is he sort of thinking are the leading characteristics?
Well, I think so on the one that we're looking at right now, kind of on your left side of the screen, you know, there's some objects. So the big bright yellow blob is very likely a rock, but then to the left of that, there's some items that look like, you know, we've got some parallel lines and some straight edges, and there's they're casting you know, a good shadow, which makes it seem as if they're projecting up off the bottom, you know, quite well. And I mean, I think we're, you know, some of these bends and angles are maybe just the distortion from the sonar, you know, movement up and down. And then should we take a look at the other one? Yeah, so now you've got those three almost sort of arrowhead shaped yellow objects, and then with these very unusual shadows that you know, with these what looks like something sticking up, but I mean, it gives the appearance of, you know, in some ways you can look at it and think like, oh, those have the shape of, you know, almost have the shape of the engine nacelle of the Sikorsky S-42, and like, could that long thing, you know, that long spiked shadow, is that a propeller blade sticking straight up?
Sure, yeah.
But I think the scale is off for that to be, you know, it's probably a lot bigger.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Mike has measured the shadow length,
Right.
Which would tell us how high it rises
Yeah.
in the water column. It seems pretty long.
But it's very unusual. I mean, to have that kind of you know, that sort of long, narrow shadow, you know, something sticking up from the seabed. So it certainly seems odd, seems out of place. So you know, again, I think it's probably wishful thinking that it would be and for three engines to be like perfectly aligned and have the propellers sticking straight up, you know, it's, you wonder, is it three objects, or is it one thing that's been kind of repeated three times by some quirk of the software or the conditions that we're dealing with? So that's another reason to you know, run over it with the camera, because then we'll find out for sure, like, what is this for real? So.
And those are, would you say, the two most promising targets, or just in terms of sort of logistics?
I think it's kind of a combination of things. You know, I haven't had a chance to review all of the targets in the way that Mike has, so I can't say if those are the top. You know, certainly think they're in his top 5, but I don't know if they're, you know, the number 1 and 2 on the hit parade. But they are in close proximity. He detected a small gap in our coverage on I think it was line 11 or something, but where the vehicle was kind of a little off kilter, a little off axis, and he's not happy with the level of coverage that resulted from that. So we want to make sure that there's no gaps in what we were able to accomplish with the survey, the initial survey area. So we would go back over that and fill it in, and then I think that puts us in really close proximity to 30 and 31, which were certainly high on the list, and they're also, they're in close proximity to each other, which one makes them easy to reach on the same run, and then also it argues, well, if we're looking for a debris field, we're looking for concentrations of things. So if these things are near to each other, then they have a higher likelihood to be, you know, part of the scatter of debris from the airplane rather than something that's just isolated by itself.
And we are operating at a depth of just over 3,000 meters. Argus is flying about 15 meters or so above the seafloor. So we're not seeing a whole lot of marine life here, but it is there. Suna, you've been logging all kinds of sea cucumbers, right?
I'm trying to.
I think we left our watch at like 168, 162?
162, yeah.
Okay, 162. So there are lots of sea cucumbers. I haven't seen, I mean, there are no sharks at this depth, but I haven't seen any other sharks otherwise. Has anyone else?
I think there could be sharks at this depth, couldn't there?
Yeah, we've been seeing sharks on the past cruise.
Oh, at this depth?
A little bit shallower, but still quite deep.
Cool. What kind of sharks are they?
Very mostly cat sharks.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a sand tiger shark on one of our watches
Oh, cool.
on the last dive as well.
That
pretty
would've
big.
been really, really cool. On this train of marine life, we have a question. What is your favorite marine mammal? I'll give you guys a chance to think while I start. I think my favorite is the Narluga whale. The
That's good.
elusive Narluga. It's a real thing. There was a subsistence hunter in the 1980s who he was out hunting and he saw a weird whale that he'd never really noticed before or seen before, and he ended up shooting it and killing it, but he kept the skull. And then earlier this year, researchers actually took the skull and conducted a DNA analysis of it and determined that it was indeed half Narluga, or half narwhal, half beluga, which is really, really
That's cool.
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it had like a long snout, and then its teeth, the narwhal has, you know, that big tooth that comes out of its head, and then belugas have more sort of regular teeth like killer whales would. So the Narluga's teeth were that sort of combination of like the spiral, but then also just in its mouth like regular teeth.
Really?
Yeah, super bizarre. There's some photos of it available online. The study was published in Nature, and it's an open access journal, so you can look at the DNA analysis. So that's what it looked like, right? Pretty wild. I don't know that there are any still around today, but that we know of at least. What about you? What's your favorite marine mammal?
Hippo.
A hippo. Oh yeah, they do. They are in the ocean, aren't they?
Well, I don't know if they're in the ocean.
Well, there are some. I think
Maybe.
it's off the coast of Gabon. I know way
Oh,
too much
really?
about this kind of stuff. Yeah, they're surfing hippos.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, so they like.
They must have big surfboards.
Yeah, I think they use their floaty bodies. I don't know. More like body surfing hippos.
Ah, yeah.
Orcas are pretty cool.
Orcas are super cool.
Kind of the top predator in the ocean.
I think we're gonna go with dolphins. Especially when
kind?
they're just, I don't know, they're all, and they like to ride the bow of ships usually
Oh, they're
too.
so cool.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
they're
amazing.
very playful and it's fun to be around usually, so. They actually like to interact sort of like with man-made things, so.
Yeah, they're super, super smart. I was just watching Life on Netflix, and they have you guys seen this? They open with a scene of bottlenose dolphins off the Keys in Florida, and they like swim in a circle, and they use their foot or their, what are those called?
Tail.
Fins, tail fin, to flap the mud. You guys, this is like a lot of talking. They use their tails to flap the mud in a circular motion, and then it sort of sparks the fish, and then it scares the fish, so they all school in the center and then try and jump out of this mud circle. And like the video shows these fish literally jumping into the mouths of the bottlenose dolphins. It is phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they're way too cool.
And then at night sometimes like bioluminescence will stick to them, so they'll glow in the dark.
Oh,
Really
what?
cool.
I've
Yeah.
really
never
cool.
seen that.
I was working off the coast of Vancouver Island, and we were cruising back at about 18 knots, 20 knots, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And they're swimming along beside us, like riding that bow wake, we slowed down a little bit, and then they still kind of stayed with us.
Oh.
And it was a small enough boat that I could go right up to the bow and like look over, and they're like playing in the thing, but they'd kind of turn and swim on their side a little bit and kind of side eye me. It was like we shared a moment. It was amazing.
That's cool.
I believe it.
On the last expedition, we spotted some dolphins at night when we were diving, so we were kind of still off of Jarvis Island, and there was tons of dolphins around, and we saw them chasing flying fish right next to the ship.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was really
whoa.
cool.
I didn't realize they ate flying fish.
I guess so.
That
And we
is
also
so-
saw a shark there in the same spot.
Wow. Manatees are also pretty cool. Sea cows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like those guys. What other cool animals did you guys see on the other legs? Any highlights?
Saw a pretty rare squid that it's so rare it hasn't been sampled alive, I think. Or it hasn't been sampled, I forget. I don't know how to describe it, but it had like a elongated fin, and we thought at first it was a fish carrying something in its mouth, but it was just a squid that had this really long appendage, if you will, or really
Was that the
long
siphon?
leaf-like fin.
Siphon squid?
Not sure.
I remember seeing a siphon squid, right?
But it was like off of its head almost, like the opposite of where the tentacles were.
That is super cool. We saw either a Dumbo octopus or vampire squid dart on and off the screen in about half a second.
Nice.
Yeah.
Saw anglerfish. One of the watches saw a vampire squid, I think.
Cool.
Was that this watch?
That was this watch. I think that was our Dumbo octopus confusion. I think that was a vampire squid.
Yeah, but you thought it was a bell pepper at first.
Maybe. I mean, who's to say, really?
That's what somebody said. They thought it was a bell pepper.
Was it the squid who had never been filmed but maybe only sampled? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Too cool. So this next leg that we're doing is diving in the National Marine Sanctuary in American Samoa. So that will be more biological sampling and sort of exploring an area that hasn't really been explored. So shifting gears from archaeology to marine biology. Just adding depth to exactly, exploring the ocean at 3,000 or so meters. So it looks like on the starboard side of the screen, of the sonar screen, that's sort of this muddy, flat muddy bottom that we've been hoping for, right? That gives us the best sonar reading, or at least allows us to sort of differentiate between potential targets against it rather than sort of rocks that look similar, other geological features. And you can see in the Argus cam as well, sort of that murky, cloudy looking sea bottom. Are we worried at all that the Samoan Clipper could be hidden beneath all of this mud or sediment?
We don't believe that there's enough sedimentation to have covered the wreckage. There might be portions of it that is partially has some sediment on it, but definitely not the entire thing. So the side scan sonar should pick that up as it images items sitting on or above or sticking up into the water column.
And we've seen a lot of rocks that haven't been covered by sediment as well, so that sort of bodes well for this idea that sedimentation isn't necessarily happening in this area. This might be one for you, Miles. In terms of if we find something interesting in the sonar, how easy is it for us to maneuver Argus back around to sort of look at it? Like turning the ship and getting back on top of the target?
Oh, if we're in our current configuration, it could be an hour or more before we really get there. Due to Argus's distance behind the ship and the forward speed of the ship. You know, we could come to a stop pretty quick, but Argus is going to swing out, and then we'll have to back up to meet it and continue to maneuver Argus into position. It could take quite a while to try and find that spot again.
Right, and Argus has been towing behind us at about 500 to 700 meters.
Yeah, I think
Give or
the
take.
most I've seen is 800. We're at about 450 right now, but that's about right for the beginning of a line.
Trevor, you worked in Vancouver Island and you're from Victoria, right?
That's right, yeah.
What would you say is special about that area for marine life? I mean, what's unique about that part of the world as opposed to other places?
There's a lot of unique stuff, but I'll tell you one. There are, I forget what the S stands for, southern resident killer whales, SRKW, which are really cool and quite topical, quite in the news a lot of the time now. I believe, well, I'm not super familiar with this, but I believe there's 3 different pods of southern resident killer whales that don't migrate. They don't, cruise around up and down the coast. They have their little area that they live their whole lives, and it's only these few pods are the only ones that do that. All the rest of the killer whales or orcas cruise up and down the coast, following food, following all this stuff. And these ones just stay there, and I believe they eat primarily Chinook. So there's a lot of work being done to preserve the salmon populations in those areas, so the orcas can survive. Because if the populations dwindle a lot, then they're going to suffer. One of the things that they're talking about is the seals. The seal population is thriving there, and the seals are actually overfishing the area. Not to a problem for the fish, but to a problem for the southern resident killer whales. And those resident orcas are the only orcas to not hunt seals. So that would solve the problem, but they haven't figured out that they can eat seals yet. So it's an interesting political dilemma because of the active fishing in that area, but as well as a biological question that the migratory, I don't know what the other name for it is, migratory orcas, the regular orcas eat seals no problem, and if the southern resident ones would learn they could eat seals, then there'd be no fish issues.
Fishes.
Do they know if it might just be a preference for the Chinook?
Yeah, maybe they're pescatarian.
I don't think it's a preference because they do not eat them at all.
Right.
And it's been enough, the fish populations have started to dwindle enough that it's actually impacted the orca population of those special pods. So it is not preference. They entirely do not eat them.
And there are 3 different families,
I believe
right?
3, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard 3.
So they're in the news quite often. I think especially because it is easier to study them just because they're in the same location year-round, right, versus these migratory killer whales. And there are a lot of other issues too. They've done studies on, underwater noise and how that might be affecting them, ship traffic as well in the region. So a lot of interesting stuff. And they all have names too, so people sort of begin to identify and, relate to their favorite SRKW whale.
Is it Chinook or is it coho? I'm doubting myself on that. Which one?
I believe it's Chinook, king salmon, not coho. I don't know. Do they only eat kings?
No, but that's their primary diet.
Okay. That's interesting. Sockeye salmon in the area have had quite a big issue as well. In that
I don't know much about that, but I have heard that that's a thing.
Yeah, sockeye especially. Which, if you like smoked salmon, sockeye makes the best smoked salmon, in my opinion.
Something else that's cool about that area is it has some of the fastest tides or tidal currents in the world. Standing waves, tidal rapids, all this kinds of stuff. You can get tidal currents of up to over 20 knots, which is incredible. So a lot of the times there's big whirlpools, and even big ships have trouble with them because not only can they not make the speed to make any forward progress, but they can even be sunk in the whirlpools. Tidal, or paying careful attention to tides and currents is essential when navigating waters around the inner waters of between Vancouver Island and mainland BC.
Do the level, like the how much of a tide differentiates, does that change based on how far away you are from the equator?
I am not sure about that.
I've heard that before, but I haven't actually vetted it.
Yeah, I do not know.
Do you ever surf up there?
You know, I've never surfed in Canada.
You haven't?
There's really, really good surfing on Vancouver Island, but
Yeah.
I've never surfed there.
Yeah, a lot of my friends surf in Sitka, and I just haven't been able to pull the trigger on that one. It's a really thick wetsuit, and it's hard to like move around on the surfboard, you know? Kind of crazy.
I don't really have a good reason. I love the cold water.
You do? Ugh, I'm such a wuss.
I love it. I love scuba diving in it. Like, some people do go full dry suit. A lot of people do full dry suit around Vancouver Island, but I did that a couple times and didn't find that I needed it, and it wasn't worth the extra effort versus just a wetsuit for me. But, you know, whatever gets you in the water. No judgment on the dry suit divers.
I've actually never been diving in Southeast Alaska, which is, I'm kind of embarrassed to say. I've only ever dove in the tropics.
It's a lot colder in Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah, or even like along the coast of California, anywhere, yeah.
There's a lot of life, that's one of the things they say about diving around. I mean, I can't speak for Alaska, but or California, but around Vancouver Island is, it's not as colorful as the tropics, but the concentration of life is like unparalleled. There's so much. It's mostly brown, but there's a lot of life. You see fish, you see octopuses, you see all sorts of species of kelp, if that's what your thing is. A whole bunch of different biology there, and there's shipwrecks, and there's even a sunken plane that they've sunk to make a scuba reef, which is really cool. I've never dove on that one, but that's on my list. You can go inside the plane and everything. Like,
oh, really, that's so cool.
They took out all the seats and took off the doors, so there's no tangly bits, and then took it out there and sunk it for scuba diving. Really cool.
Wow.
I think it's a 747, 747. I
can't
remember.
It's a big plane.
It's a big plane.
Yeah,
it's a really big plane.
Wow.
Is there much life growing on the plane itself?
Don't know. I just know about it and know approximately where it is, and never looked into it further. It's on the list.
That's one thing too that's been sort of such a stark difference is the water here is like cerulean blue. It's gorgeously blue. And then back at home it's more of that green kind of brown color. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's why it's so busy with life, right? That's all of the nutrients, phytoplankton.
Yeah.
What has been to the divers in the room, your absolute favorite place to dive, or maybe the top 5 places?
Northern California for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where'd you dive up there?
Bunch of places between sort of Bodega Bay and Mendocino. I think just because it's not frequently visited by divers. And again, the fish life and all of that is just so fantastic. So much of it is a marine protected area with different fishing limitations. So the fish life is amazing, and the abalone and all of that.
Oh yeah, that's super cool. Were you in any of the kelp forests?
Yeah. Not to the extent of like Monterey Bay, but definitely kelpy, rocky, seals, things like that. Although one of my bucket lists is to see a sea otter while in the water, which I've never done.
That would be super cool.
Yes.
There was, I think it was a white shark. Scientists were able to attach a camera, like a GoPro, to the white shark's head with a suction cup, and then it popped right off. But you could see it diving through the kelp forest and like kind of hunting and doing its thing. It was one of the coolest pieces of footage that I've seen. Maybe the only one that I've seen from a shark head.
Yeah, that's the eerie thing, is you know that they're out there
Yeah.
and they see you, and you hope you don't see them.
There's a great video too of hi.
Hey, hi,
I'm-
Sam.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm
Hi,
not
Sam.
Steve.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Sam.
Yeah, there's a great video too of an AUV from Woods Hole that was actually chomped on by a white shark, and so you just the AUV is going along, and then suddenly there's just this big mouth around it, and yeah, the photos they showed afterwards were pretty incredible of like bite marks all over it.
That's terrifying, though. There was just we just covered a story. There was drone footage off the coast of Massachusetts of 2 white sharks interacting with one another. They weren't necessarily like playing, but they were definitely noticing each other and interacting and then kind of dispersing, which is really cool. We tend to think of sharks as like these very solitary animals, and there are records of them kind of engaging with each other. It's pretty interesting.
Between California and Hawaii, there's actually a what scientists have dubbed over the years the White Shark Cafe.
Yeah.
And yeah, were you talking about this earlier already?
Nope, but I love
Yep.
this.
Yeah, a lot of the research was done in Monterey Bay by several organizations, including Imbari and Hopkins Marine Station, and they've been tagging sharks there for years and thinking originally that there was this like desert out in the middle of the ocean, but all these sharks were going to that area and doing deep, deep dives. And no one really understood what was going on out there, and now it turns out it's actually pretty rich feeding grounds is what they're thinking.
Yeah, and they're all different. They were tracking them, and there are all different kinds of like patterns in which they were diving. I think the females would only dive to a certain depth, and the males would dive to a much deeper one. And so there's also maybe theory that there's some potential mating happening here. All kinds of weird stuff. We were just talking about our favorite dive spots.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then white sharks came around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scuba diving spots is what we're talking about. Probably Baja California.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Gulf of California. Bahia de los Angeles, there's some pretty incredible.
Have you been there, Trevor?
Yeah, it's amazing.
What's so amazing about it?
Really remote part of the world where you're looking at, mountains into desert into ocean.
Oh, wow.
Or desert, mountainous desert, we'll say. Whale sharks come right into that bay every year in the fall. So you don't actually need to scuba dive for them. You just can snorkel with them on the surface or kayak out. But that area was known to many as the aquarium of the world because it was just full of life. I think I mentioned this morning?
Sometime?
Yesterday morning? Yesterday night? Ed Ricketts, a marine biologist from Monterey Bay, he and John Steinbeck, the author, took a voyage down to the Gulf of California, which used to be known as the Sea of Cortez, and did some pretty cool naturalist work featured in the book Log from the Sea of Cortez. So
cool.
Kind of captured the imagination of a lot of people.
Wow.
But yeah, the diving there is gorgeous.
Putting it on my list.
Yeah, there's something really special about desert into ocean.
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical a little bit.
Gets real hot there, though. Whew.
So you're definitely not in your dry suit down there.
Nope, no dry suit. Nope. Shorty, if anything. Shorty wetsuit.
If anything,
Yeah.
Would you say that's your favorite diving spot, Trevor, as well?
No, I would not say that.
Yeah?
I think my favorite spot was I dived on these like micro seamounts around Fiji, and they were amazing. They were like little lumps, like 30-meter seamounts. They came up to, I don't know, within 5 meters of the surface, and you could do drift dives through the center of them. So there's 2 seamounts like right beside each other. I say seamounts; they're little lumps. Drift dives between the lumps. Sea hills.
Sea lumps.
Sea bumps.
Sea bumps. And yeah, you go between the 2. They were right beside each other, probably, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 meters apart. And there was coral kind of splayed out from the side of each of them to catch the current going through there. And you'd also catch the current going through there and just cruise through without moving a muscle.
Oh, wow.
Go between the lumps. It was amazing. So colorful, so full of life.
Any other divers in the house?
I'm going to say the Galapagos.
That's a good one.
What was so cool about the, I mean, other than what I can
Hammerhead
assume?
sharks.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was
That's
crazy
really
to
cool.
see. And
Were
all
they
kind of fish and other sharks.
So now your sort of specialty is fish, right? That's your focus?
I'm working on a family in the Mediterranean where I look at their stomach content. I look at their feeding. But yeah, mostly I'm interested in fish.
Do you know off the top of your head of any other sort of rare, interesting shark interactions or stories?
No, not on the top of my head right now.
What family of fish are you studying?
Goatfishes. They're also
Goatfishes.
called mullets.
Oh,
Mullets?
Yeah, they're bottom feeders. They have like those two barbels on their chin.
And then in looking through their stomach contents, what are you hoping to find, or what's sort of your working theory?
I'm just trying to figure out what they eat and how that changes with a bunch of parameters like depth, spatial distribution, species, body size. So what they eat also give me an idea about the habitat that they live in. So I'm hoping to also find out the habitat changes in those different environments.
Do they play sort of a big role in their ecosystem?
They do, yeah. They're one of the most abundant species in that habitat. They're muddy, sandy bottom feeders.
It looks like they were also considered by the ancient Romans as one of the most highly valued foods.
Yeah, they still are in the Mediterranean. That's also one of the reasons I picked that family.
So are they commercially harvested as well then?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Do they taste good?
Some love them. I don't particularly.
Yeah, they kind of look like a catfish almost.
Really?
Maybe it's just like the little chin whiskers that make it look like that to me.
Yeah, they have like beards.
Yeah. Goatfish.
Those actually contain sensors that help them find food.
And so are they bottom dwellers then, and that's why their
Yeah.
little whiskers are on their chin?
Yes.
Super cool. And they're all different colors too.
Mine are usually reddish. We have like 6 species in the Mediterranean.
Are those related to the sort of clearish white ones that you see in the Caribbean?
Probably, it's a very big family.
Okay.
So I have a couple of favorite dive spots.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
So first would be the first place I ever went diving was in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I think I was about 12 or 13, and was desperate. I'd been hearing stories about people had been diving on the wreck of RMS Rhone, an iron-hulled steam packet that went down in a hurricane in 1867, and I finally got to take the course, and it was in those days you could do it like they called it like the resort course, and they'd put the gear on you and just here, put this in your mouth and breathe in and out, and and don't come up too fast. Like, don't come up faster than your bubbles, and here you go, kid. Like, you know, and you're in the water. So
Jeez.
I made about 2 dives before that, and I, you know, again, probably dating myself, but the BC, you know, was just this. It looked kind of like the life jacket that you would put on an airplane, you know, and complete with, it had a safety feature, which was a CO2 cartridge that you could pull in an emergency, and it would inflate instantly and rocket you to the surface.
Oh no.
So
Yikes.
fortunately, I never had to use that, had occasion to use that one.
Yeah, they
But,
don't have those anymore.
Yeah. And then my so my third dive then was I finally made it to that shipwreck and made a 90-foot wreck dive with and where we penetrated inside the hull on my third dive ever, and had never had certification training. So that's another thing that they don't do anymore. But you know, I've since I've since taken the classes, so I know better. And then I'd say really like my favorite of you know recent times was the work we did in the Marshalls, and particularly at Jalloud Atoll, and you know, where it's you know, very remote, and where you know, the relics from World War II are still present, and still the traces of these battles are you know, remaining, and you dive into these the waters, which are just startlingly blue and warm as a bathtub. It was 86 degrees all the way, you know, from the surface down to 120 feet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we typically would just dive in, like, you know, swim trunks and a t-shirt, and that's all you need. You know, so we dove these like incredibly preserved, intact World War II aircraft wrecks, both American and Japanese. And one in particular, there's the site of where a B-25 bomber was shot down on a low-level attack run, and from the accounts, the anti-aircraft fire sheared off the right wing, and the plane went inverted and impacted the water at 200 plus miles per hour. So that one is not intact. It is strewn across the bottom. You find, you know, a propeller sitting by itself. You find a landing gear leg laying up against an unexploded 500-pound bomb. But all of this, you know, remains of this, you know, this terrible, you know, violence and tragedy, but strewn about some of the most spectacularly beautiful, like, natural formations, coral formations I've ever seen, with this steep reef face that goes down to 90 feet with these and you know, I wish I knew more about you know, the classifications of the different coral, but it looked like almost like melted candle wax or sugar candy just on this this side of this this reef that just, you know, goes on and on, and so the juxtaposition of that just you know, terrible tragedy with stunning natural beauty.
Right. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, I've never dove on any sort of wreckage site, which I think would be really amazing to see sort of that difference in this, like, massive, you know, human-made object in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by marine environment.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's so out of place.
Yeah.
You know, and then also, you know, and on some of these ones, especially like if you dive like a recently sunk, like an artificial reef, and so you don't have the thing worrying about, or just, you know, you don't have in the back of your mind about how, you know, some people may have lost their lives on that spot, you know, and so you're just exploring this amazing, you know, this object that is so in this unnatural place. But, you know, if it's fresh, if it's one that's been sunk recently, you know, it just looks like a ship, like this ship, like you were walking around here, only you can float anywhere you want. You're practically like flying around this ship or inside it or through rooms and everything. It's very otherworldly.
That is super cool. This is a really interesting story. I don't know, it may be more suited for a biologist, but I think it's worth sharing. A viewer wrote in and said that they're from the Petaluma Historical Library and Museum. And in 2015, they were given a notebook from 1855 that belonged to the owner and editor of the Petaluma Argus newspaper. So Petaluma is in Northern California, just outside of San Francisco.
Argus newspaper.
Yeah, that's like a weirdly fitting newspaper name. Unrelated to an ROV.
Yep.
But there's an 1860 entry where Samuel Cassidy, who was the owner and editor, said that he was in Bodega Bay, also north of California, or north of San Francisco. So he was in Bodega when he witnessed a fight between a whale and a swordfish. And this question is, do we know of any instances where a whale and a swordfish have sort of gone at it? Yeah.
That's not a pairing that we normally hear about.
Yeah, yeah.
Whales and squid.
Yeah. Yeah, whales and sharks even.
Whales and sharks.
Yeah. Swordfish? I don't know. I'm by no means the person to ask, but.
Wow. That's a new one. Does it say what kind of whale?
It doesn't, but I do know that fish will often kind of like jump out of the water if they're being chased by a predator, right? So maybe it could have even been a shark maybe that was mistaken for a whale. I don't know if whales eat swordfish. I don't know enough about it, but I think the only whale in that part of the world would be a killer whale probably.
Yeah, that would be eating something,
Yeah.
I know there was an instance where a swordfish speared one of the Pisces submersibles with the Hawaii Undersea Research Lab. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and sliced one of the exterior hydraulic lines. And, but not sure what if it was just sort of confused by the lighting on the sub or how it happened that
yeah, or if it was
collided with them.
intentional or
Right.
accidental. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, swordfish are amazing fish as well. We haven't seen a whole lot of fish down here, Suna. You've mentioned a couple of eel-like fish.
I think we occasionally do. They're just too far away and too small for us to see.
So you're going to be excited to drop down on some of the targets to see what marine life is down there.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
yeah. So no matter what watch, you're going to be up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Just, because we're not necessarily seeing a whole lot of marine life doesn't mean it's not there. Argus is flying at an altitude of just over or around 15 meters above the ocean floor. So that's around 45, 50 feet or so. So we do occasionally have a little sea cucumber. I think we've seen a couple tiny fish and a Dumbo, octopus, and or vampire squid. We're not sure which it was, but there are some creatures making little cameos here and there.
I believe we've seen some shrimp too, right?
Oh yeah, we've seen some shrimp.
Siphonophores, did that come up on the list?
I did not say that.
Okay.
Have you seen them?
Yeah, I just saw one about 5 minutes ago. Yep.
Alvin was also attacked by a swordfish in 1967.
So it was attacked. Oh, so two.
Is that two separate ones then?
Someone's got to get down to the bottom of this.
Yeah. What is the swordfish conspiracy?
Yeah, because the other one would have been when the Pisces subs, which operate in the Pacific. So, Yeah, that would be a different incident.
Interesting.
Do you know what year that one was?
No, but I think it was probably in the 90s.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This one was in 1967, so
1997, 30 years later.
30
Once every
years
30
later.
years,
Yeah.
a swordfish attacks.
So what? We've got 9 years to go.
Yeah.
8 years to go.
Submersibles of the world, prepare.
It's dangerous out there. Yeah, it was during dive number 202 on July 6, 1967.
The most recent big marine animal sighting I know of is a giant squid was spotted again in the Gulf of Mexico.
I saw that.
Yep,
Yeah.
by the University of Southern Mississippi.
Yeah.
One of our partners, actually, in the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute. But it's only the second time that someone's caught him on camera. And it was, this was again led by Edie Witter, who led the last, or was part of the last expedition that was able to grab footage of him. But it's really cool to see the device they're using because it just looks like this little light up disco ball.
Yeah.
And the giant squid seemed to be extremely interested in it.
Right. It didn't necessarily just like blip on and then go off. It's sort of like sitting there and interacting and checking out what's going on.
Exactly.
It's a really cool video.
Yep. But it's definitely a good reminder that even some of the world's largest animals are so rarely seen. You wonder what else we haven't
I know.
seen.
I'm convinced there's a megalodon out there somewhere.
For the record. Megalodons are not real.
It exists.
We do get a lot of questions when those shows air.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
I suspect there's probably something out there that is like a megalodon, but
Yeah, there's got to be.
the megalodons are definitely extinct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
There-
Meg.
There's got to be one surviving non-extinct megalodon in the world. I'm convinced.
There you have it.
Then
If
Nice
swordfish,
enjoy answering the questions. that come in.
I've also heard there's civilizations on the bottom of the ocean.
Nope.
Yep. All this information came from a Lyft driver.
oh,
Not a sponsor.
if swordfish can conspire.
Yeah. Oh, it's way too early for conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
No.
For the record, swordfish do not conspire to our knowledge. And
Swordfish do not exist.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
who invited you here? Who do you know here?
Good question.
Ouch.
Trevor just showed up one day.
What's that?
Trevor just showed up one day.
Oh, that's not what I. Never mind.
Oh. So what knot are you learning today, Trevor?
I am not learning any knots today. I've learned enough.
So which ones have you learned?
Oh no, you want me to go through the list?
Just verbally, you don't have to show us, yeah.
Okay. It's extensive.
How about a couple?
Okay. I'll tell you my favorite one I've just learned. How
Okay.
about
Great.
that? Let me find it. I can't remember which one's my favorite. Oh, I like that one, but okay. My favorite one's the Blake hitch.
What's that look like?
I could
It's
show you.
a terrible exercise. Yeah.
Knots are not very transferable to SPL.
No, they're not.
You go around a couple times, then pass it over, then under, then through the two loops.
Is this the horse?
Cool.
The horse hitch one?
No, that's a different one.
I'm a fan of that one.
The,
but it has.
the highwayman's hitch is a
Yes.
different one. That's another good one, but it wasn't my favorite.
I like the application of the highwayman hitch.
That's a good. Okay, I can discuss the highwayman's hitch. Okay.
Is it for highway robberies?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, for bank robberies.
Okay.
So it's a way that you can tie your horse up to the hitching post.
So you can pull it quickly?
So you can pull it
Yep.
quickly, but you can keep the bitter end in your hand. It's not wrapped around the hitching post,
Oh.
so you can hold on to it so it doesn't get tangled up in your horse's legs.
Very
But
good.
according to Dan, every time he's used it to tie up his horses, they've escaped. So it's not actually that practical unless you're only in it, only tying up your horse for the amount of time it
You
takes to rob
just
a
need
bank.
to rob your bank quicker.
Well, he doesn't rob banks very often on his ranch, so maybe that's the problem. Not a good long-term horse hitching knot.
Was it? What was the one-handed one you were doing? Is that a bowline?
Oh, the one-handed bowline's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Suna mastered that pretty quickly.
She nailed it, yeah. Sue's the knot expert. What's the crane look like today, Sam? Starboard. That's port.
Oh, they're starboard.
That's,
Stand by.
that's larboard.
Oh.
There it is.
Here, we'll switch that one on channel 3 for the folks at home.
I want to get rid of the unibrow. Bump, bump, bump in.
Stand by.
Bump, bump,
Yeah,
bump.
jeez. Front seat, front row drivers.
Look at
Okay.
that unibrow.
We're gonna all right, if you're on quad, you can see the storm that's moving through
Quad.
off the A-frame. What's the, do you have any other details on this, Miles?
Yeah, tell us about it.
I just what you see. Winds are still good in our area. They've come up a little bit, but nothing to be worried about.
Are you worried?
Yep.
Yesterday, that squall that moved through was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was an incredible amount of rain in a not incredible amount of time.
There still needed to be some thunder and lightning.
But wind picked up too. Pushing 25, I think.
Yeah, I heard it gusted over 30.
Really?
And then it was gone.
And you can see the island out there.
Can you?
Yep, all the way out. Here, I can zoom in.
Enhance.
Doing a slow pan here, and then we're gonna zoom. Here we go. Oh, fast zoom.
Ooh.
There it is.
I'm going to just trust you. I cannot see.
Oh, you guys don't have a...
We got
Oh,
on
that little
there,
one.
but it's
Yep.
wee.
It's not too far from
Yeah.
land.
Is that aft or port? That's aft.
Yep, came aft. You want me to go back in?
I can see the island. No, I got it now.
Top of point.
Oh, too far.
It looks so gray out there, doesn't it?
Yep.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Dark and stormy night.
It's
But
a
there's
moonless night.
Look at that
a
lovely
little
crane.
peak of blue sky.
Yeah, let's see if we can find more blue sky. We found a smudge on the dome.
Condensation.
It's foggy on that side.
Yeah. Oh, whoop, whoop, too fast.
Seems very touchy.
Student driver.
This is so fun. I love this little joystick.
Yeah, there's the back deck.
Hmm.
Let's see what else we can go see. Let's do a little ship tour.
Hey Sam, what are those big floats for?
Those are to keep Argus in line. Oh, wait, here, let's go back. Those are to keep Argus in line when ROV is getting back on deck. So as it sometimes, if the ship rolls, Argus will swing, and those help, those fenders help buffer that movement.
Nice.
Looks like port cam is back on ocean. Let's go see what's going on in the wet lab.
Oh, yep. Active.
Ooh, exciting.
Bustling.
Not much going on in the wet lab.